13.8 billion years ago, in the first moments after the Big Bang, the universe was nothing but a seething ocean of fundamental particles, quarks, leptons, energy itself, dancing in the cosmic dark. And yet, from this apparent chaos, something extraordinary began to happen. These tiny particles started to find each other, to bond, to create something larger than themselves. First, they formed protons and neutrons, then atoms, then molecules, then stars, then galaxies, then you. But here's what scientists have discovered that will change how you see every small action you take for the rest of your life. The same fundamental force that built galaxies from quantum particles is the exact same force that builds extraordinary lives from tiny daily habits. And if you've ever wondered why you can't seem to stick to the changes you want to make, why your best intentions crumble under the weight of another ordinary Tuesday, why some people seem to effortlessly transform their lives while others remain stuck in endless cycles of starting and stopping, the answer lies not in willpower or motivation, but in understanding the deepest laws of the universe itself. Today, we're going to explore the science of habits through the lens of cosmic creation. We're going to discover why your brain operates like a galaxy in formation, why your daily routines follow the same patterns as stellar evolution, and how you can harness the fundamental forces that shape the cosmos to reshape your life. Because the truth is, you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, becoming conscious of itself, one small habit at a time. Let me tell you about James. Last January, like millions of others, he decided this would be the year he finally got in shape. He bought an expensive gym membership, new workout clothes, protein powder, and a fitness tracker that could measure his heartbeat from space. On January 1st, he worked out for 2 hours. On January 2nd, 90 minutes. By January 15th, he hadn't been to the gym in 8 days. Sound familiar? James made the same mistake that most of us make when we try to change. He tried to create a galaxy before he had built a single atom. In the early universe, after the Big Bang's initial explosion, temperatures were so extreme that even atoms couldn't form. For nearly 400,000 years, the universe existed in what cosmologists call the Dark Ages, a period where the fundamental building blocks of matter existed, but couldn't yet bond into anything stable. It wasn't until the universe cooled to just under 3,000 Kelvin that something magical happened. Electrons, which had been flying around freely, finally slowed down enough to be captured by atomic nuclei. The first hydrogen atoms formed. Then helium. These were incredibly simple structures, just one or two particles bound together by electromagnetic force. But these simple atoms were the foundation for everything that followed. Stars, planets, life itself. Your habits work exactly the same way. Neuroscientist Dr. Gravitational at MIT has spent decades studying what she calls a habit loop, the neurological pattern that governs every automatic behavior in your life. Her research reveals that habits form in a specific region of your brain called the basal ganglia, the same region that helps birds navigate thousands of miles during migration and helps you drive home from work without consciously thinking about every turn. But here's the fascinating part. When Dr. Graybiel examined the brain scans of her subjects learning new habits, she discovered that habit formation follows a pattern that's remarkably similar to how atoms form bonds. At first, when you're learning something new, your entire brain lights up with activity. Neurons fire across multiple regions as your prefrontal cortex. Your brain CEO tries to consciously control every aspect of the new behavior. This is exhausting, which is why learning feels so draining. But as you repeat the behavior, something beautiful happens. The activity begins to quiet down in most areas of the brain, but intensifies in the basal ganglia. Your brain is literally creating new neural pathways, strengthening the connections between neurons through a process called myelination, the biological equivalent of atoms forming bonds. And just like those first hydrogen atoms in the early universe, once these neural bonds become stable, they require almost no energy to maintain. The behavior becomes automatic, effortless, part of who you are. This is why James failed, and why most of us fail when we try to change too much too fast. He tried to create complex molecular structures before he had stable atoms. He tried to form the neural equivalent of a galaxy before he had built a single hydrogen atom of habit. The most successful people in the world, the ones who seem to effortlessly maintain extraordinary routines, understand this principle intuitively. They don't start with grand gestures. They start atomic. Take Stephen King, who has published over 60 novels and writes every single day. His daily writing habit? 2,000 words. That's about 8 pages. Atomic. Or Maya Angelou, who rented a hotel room with nothing but a Bible, a thesaurus, and a bottle of sherry, and wrote her masterpieces in longhand on yellow legal pads. Her routine? Show up at the same time every day and write, even if she only produced one good paragraph. Atomic. The key insight here is that these small habits work because they align with how your brain actually functions. Your basal ganglia doesn't distinguish between important and unimportant behaviors. It simply automates whatever you repeat consistently. Feed it atomic-sized behaviors, and it will turn them into effortless routines that become the foundation for everything else. But there's another cosmic principle at work here, one that explains why some atomic habits grow into galaxies of change, while others remain isolated and eventually fade away. In 1915, Albert Einstein published his theory of general relativity, fundamentally changing our understanding of how the universe works. He revealed that massive objects don't just exist in space. They actually bend space around them, creating what we experience as gravity. But here's what's truly mind-bending. Einstein showed us that gravity isn't just a force between objects. It's a curvature in the fabric of reality itself. Planets don't choose to orbit stars. They follow the path of least resistance through curved space-time. Your habits work exactly the same way. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are. And just like massive objects in space, your identity creates a gravitational field that bends your future actions toward it. The stronger your identity, the more powerfully it pulls your behaviors into orbit around it. Let me show you what I mean. In 2013, researchers at Stanford University conducted a fascinating experiment. They took a group of people and randomly divided them into 2 groups. Both groups were asked to complete exactly the same series of small environmentally friendly actions. Things like turning off lights when leaving a room, recycling bottles, and choosing to walk instead of drive for short trips. But there was one crucial difference in how the researchers described these actions. The first group was told they were doing environmentally friendly things. The second group was told they were becoming environmentally friendly people. Same actions, same behaviors, but completely different identity frames. After just 2 weeks, something remarkable happened. The group that had been told they were becoming environmentally friendly people were 50% more likely to continue the behaviors after the study ended. They also started doing additional environmental actions that weren't even part of the original experiment. Using reusable bags, eating less meat, seeking out eco-friendly products. The second group had developed what psychologists call identity-based momentum. Their small actions had begun to reshape their sense of self, which in turn created a gravitational pull that attracted more aligned behaviors. This is the difference between outcome-based habits and identity-based habits. Outcome-based habits are focused on what you want to achieve. Losing 20 pounds, writing a novel, running a marathon. Identity-based habits are focused on who you want to become. Becoming someone who prioritizes health, someone who writes regularly, someone who is disciplined about training. The problem with outcome-based habits is that they work against the fundamental structure of how change actually happens in the universe. They're trying to create the end result without building the underlying system that supports it. Think about stars. A star isn't trying to shine. It shines because that's what happens when you have that much mass concentrated in one place. The nuclear fusion, the light, the heat, these are all natural consequences of the star structure, not goals the star is trying to achieve. Similarly, people who successfully maintain extraordinary habits aren't trying to do them. They're simply expressing who they are. The habit flows naturally from their identity. I learned this lesson the hard way in my own life. For years, I tried to become a morning person by setting earlier and earlier alarms, buying sunrise simulation lamps, and reading every productivity blog on the internet. I was focused on the outcome, waking up early rather than the identity. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to wake up early and started asking a different question. What kind of person wakes up early naturally? The answer changed everything. People who wake up early are usually people who go to bed early. People who go to bed early are usually people who have evening routines that help them wind down. People who have evening routines are usually people who plan their days in advance. Instead of trying to force myself to wake up at 5 a.m., I started with the atomic habit of writing down 3 priorities for the next day before going to bed. That's it. No alarm changes. No dramatic lifestyle overhaul. Just one tiny identity-based action. I am someone who prepares for tomorrow. Within 2 weeks, this small habit began to create its own gravitational field. Because I knew what I wanted to accomplish the next day, I found myself naturally wanting to go to bed earlier to get adequate rest. Because I was going to bed earlier, I started waking up earlier without an alarm. Because I was waking up earlier, I had quiet time in the morning to think and plan. The habit I was trying to force for years emerged naturally once I aligned it with identity instead of outcome. This is why the most successful habit changes feel almost inevitable in retrospect. They're not the result of superhuman willpower battling against natural tendencies. They're the natural consequence of identity gravitational fields pulling behaviors into alignment. But there's still another cosmic force at work, one that determines whether your small atomic habits remain isolated behaviors or begin to chain together into something magnificent. In the Orion Nebula, about 1,500 light-years from Earth, something extraordinary is happening right now. New stars are being born, but they're not forming in isolation. They're forming in clusters, their gravitational fields interacting with each other, their stellar winds and radiation pressure creating feedback loops that influence the formation of their neighbors. Astronomers call this triggered star formation. One star's birth creates conditions that make it easier for nearby stars to form, which in turn makes it easier for the next generation of stars to ignite. The result is not just individual stars, but entire stellar nurseries, vast regions where hundreds or thousands of new stars come into existence together. Your habits work exactly the same way. In 2018, researchers at the University of California, Los Angeles conducted a groundbreaking study on what they called habit stacking, the tendency for one positive behavior to trigger the adoption of other positive behaviors, even when those behaviors seem completely unrelated. They followed 12,000 people over the course of 18 months, tracking not just individual habit changes, but how those changes influenced other areas of their lives. What they discovered was remarkable. People who successfully established one small daily habit were 43% more likely to successfully establish a completely different habit within the following 6 months. But the effect went deeper than that. People who exercised regularly were more likely to eat healthily, even though exercise and diet were tracked as separate behaviors. People who meditated regularly were more likely to maintain organized workspaces. People who read consistently were more likely to go to bed earlier. The researchers termed this phenomenon behavioral constellation formation, the tendency for habits to cluster together and reinforce each other through mechanisms that aren't immediately obvious. Dr. Filippo Lally, who led the study, discovered that this happens because habits share what she calls keystone mechanisms, underlying psychological and neurological systems that support multiple behaviors simultaneously. When you exercise regularly, you're not just building physical fitness. You're strengthening your brain's executive function, improving your stress management, and practicing the skill of delayed gratification. These keystone mechanisms then make it easier to establish other habits that rely on the same underlying systems. It's like stellar formation in the cosmic sense. Each successful habit doesn't just exist in isolation. It creates conditions that make other positive behaviors more likely to emerge. Let me tell you about Sarah, a software engineer who participated in one of these studies. She started with the atomic habit of doing 10 push-ups every morning after brushing her teeth. That's all. No gym membership, no complex workout routine, no dramatic lifestyle change. Just 10 push-ups. After 3 weeks, something interesting happened. She noticed she was making better food choices at lunch, even though she hadn't consciously decided to change her diet. After 2 months, she found herself go to bed 30 minutes earlier because she wanted to wake up feeling energized for her push-ups. After 4 months, she had started reading personal development books during her commute because the morning exercise had given her more mental clarity and motivation for self-improvement. By the end of the year, Sarah's life looked completely different. She had lost 15 pounds, gotten a promotion at work, started learning Spanish, and begun training for a half marathon. But it all traced back to 10 morning push-ups, one atomic habit that triggered the formation of an entire constellation of positive behaviors. This is the power of what researchers call habit contagion. When you understand that habits exist in networks rather than isolation, you can strategically choose small behaviors that are most likely to trigger positive cascades in other areas of your life. The key is identifying what Dr. Charles Duhigg calls keystone habits, small changes or routines that people introduce into their lives that unintentionally carry over into other areas. Exercise is a keystone habit for many people because it improves energy, mood, stress resilience, and executive function, all of which support other positive behaviors. Family dinners are keystone habits because they improve communication, create shared goals, and establish routines, all of which strengthen relationships and family culture. But here's what's fascinating. Keystone habits are often highly personal. What triggers a positive cascade for one person might have no effect on another, depending on their individual psychology, circumstances, and existing habit networks. This is why the most effective approach to habit change isn't to copy someone else's routine, but to understand the principles of stellar formation and apply them to your own life. You need to identify which small atomic behaviors are most likely to create the gravitational conditions for other positive habits to form in your personal orbit. Think about your current daily routine. Which small behavior, if you made it absolutely consistent, will be most likely to influence other areas of your life? Which atomic habit would create the strongest gravitational field around the identity you want to develop? That's your starting point. That's your hydrogen atom in the cosmic dark, waiting to bond with others and eventually light up your entire galaxy. But there's one more cosmic principle we need to understand, perhaps the most important one. It's the principle that explains why some people's habit constellations eventually become self-sustaining systems of growth, while others flame out after initial success. Deep in the core of every star, something miraculous is happening, under pressures millions of times greater than anything on Earth, and at temperatures exceeding 10 million degrees. Hydrogen atoms are being forced together with such intensity that they overcome their natural electromagnetic repulsion and fuse into helium. This process, nuclear fusion, is what makes stars shine. It's what has been powering the sun for 4.5 billion years, and what will continue powering it for another 5 billion years. But here's what makes fusion so extraordinary. It's not just sustainable, it's self-reinforcing. The energy released by fusion reactions creates the heat and pressure necessary to trigger more fusion reactions, which release more energy, which creates more heat and pressure. Once a star achieves nuclear fusion, it becomes a self-sustaining system of creation. It doesn't need external fuel. It doesn't need someone to wind it up every morning. It generates its own energy from within, and that energy enables it to keep generating more energy. Your habits can work exactly the same way, but only if you understand how to create the psychological equivalent of nuclear fusion. Most people think motivation is what powers long-term behavior change. They believe that if they can just get excited enough, disciplined enough, or inspired enough, they'll be able to maintain their new habits indefinitely. But research in behavioral psychology reveals that motivation works more like chemical fuel than nuclear fusion. It burns bright and hot at first, but it's always getting consumed. Eventually, it runs out, and if that's all you're relying on, your habit system collapses. Sustainable habits are powered by something much more fundamental, meaning. Dr. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, spent his life studying what enables some people to persevere through the most difficult circumstances, while others give up. His conclusion, based both on his research and his experience surviving Nazi concentration camps, was that humans can endure almost anything if they can find meaning in it. But Frankl discovered something even more profound. Meaning isn't something you find out there in the world. Meaning is something you create through your daily choices and actions. And the most powerful source of meaning is what he called responsibility. The recognition that your actions matter, not just to yourself, but to something larger than yourself. This is the secret to creating fusion-powered habits. When your small daily behaviors connect to something meaningful, when they become expressions of responsibility, rather than just personal preferences, they generate their own motivation from within, Let me tell you about David, a teacher who struggled with a habit of grading papers consistently. For years, he would let assignments pile up, then spend entire weekends grading in marathon sessions. Feeling overwhelmed and resentful, he tried time management techniques, reward systems, even working in coffee shops to change his environment. Nothing stuck. The breakthrough came when David shifted from thinking about grading as a task on his to-do list to thinking about it as an act of service to his students. He realized that timely feedback wasn't just administrative work. It was one of the most powerful ways he could support his students' learning and growth. Instead of trying to motivate himself to grade papers, he began seeing each assignment as a conversation with an individual student. Instead of feeling burdened by the work, he began feeling responsible for creating learning opportunities. The habit became an expression of his identity as an educator, not just a job requirement. Within a month, David was grading assignments within 24 hours of collection. But more importantly, the quality of his feedback improved dramatically because he was engaged with the work at a deeper level. His student performance improved. His job satisfaction increased. The habit had become self-sustaining because it was powered by meaning rather than motivation. This is what researchers call intrinsic motivation, behavior that is driven by internal satisfaction rather than external rewards or pressures. But the latest research in motivation science reveals that intrinsic motivation isn't just about personal satisfaction. The strongest intrinsic motivation comes from what Dr. Adam Grant calls prosocial purpose, the recognition that your actions contribute to something beyond yourself. People who exercise because they want to be healthy for their family stick with it longer than people who exercise for personal appearance. People who save money because they want to create security for their children maintain better financial habits than people who save for personal purchases. People who develop professional skills because they want to serve their clients or make a positive impact are more consistent than people who develop skills for personal advancement. This is the fusion reaction of habit formation. When your atomic behaviors connect to meaning that transcends self-interest, they begin to generate their own energy. They become expressions of who you are and what you care about, rather than just items on your self-improvement checklist. But here's the beautiful part. You don't need to wait for some grand sense of purpose to arrive. You can create fusion-powered habits by consciously connecting your small daily actions to the people and values you already care about. That morning workout isn't just about your health. It's about having the energy to be fully present with your family. That daily reading habit isn't just about personal growth. It's about developing the knowledge and perspective you need to contribute meaningfully to your community. That consistent work routine isn't just about productivity. It's about creating value for the people who depend on you. When you make these connections explicit, when you regularly remind yourself how your small atomic habits serve something larger than personal convenience, you create the psychological conditions for nuclear fusion. Your behaviors become self-sustaining because they're powered by something inexhaustible. The human need to matter, to contribute, to be responsible for something meaningful. And this is where the cosmic metaphor becomes more than just poetry. This is where it becomes literally true. 14 billion years ago, the universe was a sea of quantum potential. Today, you are reading these words, contemplating how to shape your life through the power of small, consistent actions. Think about what an extraordinary transformation that represents. The same fundamental forces that turn quantum particles into atoms, atoms into stars, and stars into galaxies have been working through the entire history of the cosmos to create you. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, becoming conscious of itself, learning to direct its own evolution. And the habits you build are how the universe continues to evolve through you. Every time you choose the atomic behavior over the dramatic gesture, you're aligning yourself with the fundamental patterns of creation. Every time you focus on identity rather than outcomes, you're harnessing the gravitational forces that shape galaxies. Every time you create habits that connect to form constellations of positive behaviors, you're participating in the same network effects that create stellar nurseries. And every time you power your habits with meaning rather than motivation, you're accessing the same fusion reactions that make stars shine for billions of years. This isn't metaphor. This isn't inspiration. This is physics. This is how change actually works at every scale, from quantum to cosmic to personal. The habits you build tomorrow will determine who you become next year. The identity you reinforce through your daily actions will create the gravitational field that shapes your future choices. The meaning you connect to your behaviors will determine whether your changes burn out like a meteor or shine steadily like a star. You have within you the same creative force that built galaxies from hydrogen gas. You have access to the same principles of organization that turn chaos into order, simplicity into complexity, potential into reality. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you're willing to start atomic, whether you're ready to trust a process that has been building extraordinary things from simple beginnings for 14 billion years. Your next small habit is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Your next consistent action is a gravitational force shaping your future self. Your next meaningful choice is a fusion reaction that can power sustainable transformation for years to come. The universe spent 13.8 billion years preparing the stage for this moment, for your opportunity to consciously participate in the ongoing creation of reality. What atomic habit will you start with? What identity will you begin reinforcing? What meaning will power your personal evolution? The cosmos is waiting to see what you'll build with the same forces that built everything that has ever existed. Start small. Start today. Start with one atom. And trust the process that turns atoms into galaxies. Your extraordinary life is already written in the laws of physics. Now it's time to live it, one small habit at a time. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. But it is also more beautiful than we imagine, more purposeful than we imagine, and more accessible than we imagine. Your habits are your participation in the ongoing creation of reality. Make them count.